Eccles has its cakes, Kendal has mint ones, Bury has its black puddings and Manchester has its tart. We do like our food in the Northwest, but did you know that some of our signature dishes are hundreds of years old? Nichola Dixon has been in search of the origins of some of our favourite recipes.
I'm having a disagreement with my waistline here. My midriff is telling me I shouldn't be doing this, but for me this really is the dream assignment. It's right up there with professional chocolate sampling and champagne tasting. Puddings and pies, bring it on. Okay, let me just try and conjure just how amazing this is. Aromas of icing sugar and vanilla, notes of citrus and cinnamon. Definite mocha. Definite yum. I've come to Slattery's Bakery at Whitefield in Manchester. It's been here for almost half a century, and appropriately, given where we are, one of its greatest specialities is the traditional delicacy to which our city gave its name, Manchester tart, or as it was once known, Manchester pudding. So John, you're the owner of Slattery's.
That's correct,
The
yes.
main reason we're here today is to see the Manchester tart, and this one, the yellow one, is the Manchester tart.
That's correct. That's the definitive Manchester tart. It's quite an old, traditional Manchester recipe.
A recipe that stretches back at least as far as the famous Victorian cookbook by Mrs. Beeton, the Delia of her day, where it's first mentioned. John has taken the original classic and created versions with a modern twist.
The Manchester tart recipe is one that does evolve, like all recipes, all the time. And you've got the traditional Manchester tart here. You've also got a variety with bananas in. You've got a chocolate one, which is one of the newest ones. And we've made the Manchester tart into a chocolate. We've used a chocolate case, same sort of filling inside, but a chocolate custard flavoured ganache.
If you were at school any time between the 40s to the 80s, you might remember Manchester tarts from school dinners, but I bet they were a million miles from confectioner Michael Wilde's freshly made creations. So this is raspberry jam going in?
It is, yeah. Just want a thin layer of raspberry jam going on the bottom.
The pastry that's been baked, that's the only baking at all throughout this process, is it?
It is, yeah. The custard's already cooked, so there's no need to do any more baking. Just put a thin layer of coconut, and then it's in the fridge to cool down, and then it's ready to eat.
What I'm in search of now is another piece of culinary history, and one with traceable roots even older than Victorian times. So it should be somewhere around here. This is Eccles in Greater Manchester, a place which gave its name to a pastry now known around the world. What I'm looking for is the original building where back in 1796 a man called James Birch opened the first bakery commercially making and selling Eccles cakes. And I'm told it's opposite a church, which is right there, possibly on a corner, and that possibly one of the buildings has been demolished, so it could be one of these two buildings. I don't know. The trail ran dry, but the original bakery was called by the novelist Arnold Bennett the most romantic shop in the world. But try and find a bakery making Eccles cakes here now and you won't. For that, you'll have to travel across the city to Ardwick. 150,000 Eccles cakes a day are made here, a lot more than when James Birch made money out of what till then had been a simple patty made in every peasant home. But this is still a family business, run by Ian Edmonds, whose grandfather bought cakes from bakers in the 1920s and sold them from his horse-drawn carts. Eccles cake is something that was made in pretty much every family and bakery throughout the country.
Yeah, it was. I mean, traditionally, the way that they would make an Eccles cake in a baker's shop, they would use it to get rid of all the scraps that the baker had accumulated during the week. For example, he may have plenty of cake crumbs there he needs to get rid of. So what he'd have done, he'd have mixed them with currants, brown sugar, bits of margarine maybe, and he'd have wrapped them in a pastry case made up of all the scrap pastry. But I mean, the way we make them here, we just make them using the finest ingredients.
Nice and warm still. That was delicious, but I do wonder how close that was to an Eccles cake bought from James Birch's original shop in the late 18th century. I've come to meet someone who knows how to find out.
Oh, hiya.
Pleased to meet you.
How are you? All right?
We'll get started.
This is Tom Bridge, a world expert on puddings and pies.
James.
And this is the John Rylands Library in Manchester.
This is The Experienced English Housekeeper, written by Elizabeth Raffald.
Elizabeth Raffald, a housekeeper and the forerunner of Mrs. Beeton, wrote her book in 1769. She passed to a maid working for her a recipe which was key to James Birch's success.
And what happened was, the maid, she was going to marry a James Birch in Eccles. So when they went to Eccles and opened the shop, this recipe was the original recipe that they actually made, which today we know as the Eccles cake.
Here, the sweet patties.
The sweet patties.
Yeah.
But Eccles cakes, just like Manchester puddings, must have evolved. The version at the factory had nothing like these ingredients. Sampling is in order, and Tom has offered to make both Elizabeth Raffald's original recipe and James Birch's commercialised version.
Right, this is the original Elizabeth Raffald recipe. We have currants, candied orange peel, soft brown sugar, freshly grated nutmeg, the yolk of 1 egg, castor sugar, calf's foot jelly, apple and French brandy.
100 years earlier, Elizabeth Raffald might not have been writing about these cakes at all.
The French brandy was banned by the Puritans in 1650 because Cromwell didn't like everybody having fun, and therefore the Eccles cake and Christmas pies, were banned.
So some of these ingredients were taken out then by James Birch, weren't they?
Yeah, and the things that came out was the calf's foot jelly and the brandy, because it was too expensive. Birch wouldn't have used them in the shop.
Right, okay.
And he brought in the fresh ginger, butter to help to bind it all and bring out the flavour of the currants, and 5 spice. Okay. So the rest of the ingredients stayed.
But today, those ingredients haven't stayed, have they? Because what the Borpers had in their homes back then is pretty much what we eat today.
Yeah, basically what you're eating in the supermarkets is paupers.
Yeah.
Eccles cake. This is the bee's knees, this is the business.
And we're going to taste them.
We're going to taste them sometimes, yeah.
And of course, it wouldn't be fair trial of our culinary traditions if we weren't to have a comparative test. Try both recipes for research purposes.
Right, let's get on with it. Let's get tasting. This is the Elizabeth Raffald one. Taste the spices, can't you?
Taste the brandy.
Okay. Let's go for James's. James Birch's.
Taste the butter,
You can.
the nutmeg.
I do prefer the first one though.
Do you?
Don't know why. No, it's not the brandy. Honest.
But this is gorgeous. You can taste the ginger and the freshly grated
Yeah, you
nutmeg.
can. It is sweeter, isn't it? Definitely sweeter. But I'd say thanks, James. Very nice indeed. But Elizabeth. Yeah, I think that's done it for me.
He is the genius.
Absolutely. Cheers.
Cheers.